Good afternoon. Welcome to this American Spaces event on women in the arts. I'm Julian Cruz. I'm the Deputy Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Zambia, and I want to thank our audience for giving us your time this afternoon. I promise you won't regret it. We have an amazing panelist and an amazing moderator and some really compelling panelists today. So thank you for joining us from the U.S. Embassy. I'm going to turn it over to Pamela, the director of our American Corner at Copperbelt University. Pamela, thank you so much for agreeing to moderate this discussion today. I turn it over to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Julian. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion that we're going to have on women in the arts, which is part of the U.S. Embassy celebration of Women's History Month. My name is Pamela Mutale, American Corner Coordinator at the Copperbelt University. And it is my honor today to host three phenomenal women in Zambia that are making tremendous contributions in the artistic field. And we hope to reach as many young women as possible and girls out there that share an interest or a passion for the arts. Our focus in today's discussion will be on building supportive spaces for women in the arts in Zambia. Supporting the arts and culture is a priority for the U.S. Embassy, and the arts are an expressive and creative form of communication and rich part of Zambia's history. So over the years, art has developed and changed from the 7,000-year-old rock carvings that our ancestors left in various locations in Zambia to the current and dynamic innovative skills that are being demonstrated globally, especially by the youth. So women have become huge contributors in the arts, a field which has for a very long time dominated our male counterparts, been dominated by our male counterparts. And as such, we're seeing more and more women that are confidently taking their place as leaders. And this represents a marvelous breakthrough in our culture as well as our mindsets. So supporting a society that is open to empowerment and promotes women's marginalized women's groups and other marginalized groups is a central goal for the U.S. Embassy, and especially for the U.S. State Department, and the foreign policy goes across the world and in Zambia. So it is our belief that women's economic, social, cultural contributions and innovation will drive economic prosperity and are central to the healthy democracy and preservation of culture. Today, I am joined by Samba Yonga, co-founder of the Museum of Women's History, as well as Karen Nakawala, who is the CEO of the Zambia Fashion Week. In addition, we are joined by Jessie Chisi, an award-winning filmmaker, and we hope that this discussion that we're going to have is going to be fruitful and inspiring to you, our audience out there. So for those that are watching and are with us on Zoom, kindly put your contributions and questions in the comments section, and the panelists will be able to respond to them. So now, ladies, kindly introduce yourselves and tell us about your experience in the artistic field. We can begin with Samba.
Hi, thanks so much, Pamela, for that great introduction. And hello, everyone. And hi to my fellow panelists. Nice to see you, even in the COVID days. Thank you for this opportunity to join and share with you all. My name is Samba Yonga, and I'm the co-founder of the Women's History Museum of Zambia, along with Mulenga Kapwepwe. For us, our intervention in the arts is slightly different in that our aim is to restore narratives of indigenous knowledge systems and use the arts and digital media as a way of disseminating them. So we realized that there were two things that was missing: indigenous knowledge systems and information around them, but ways of also expressing them. So instead of having people go and find libraries where they can go and get books, and by the way, these books don't even exist, we decided to use new media and digital media as a way of sharing this content. So we produced series, we produced events, artistic collaborations with different artists as a way of sharing this knowledge. And in that way, we're doing two things. We're teaching, we're sharing, and we're also learning as well at the same time. But we're also validating our indigenous knowledge systems and showing that they can be used in a contemporary setting.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Karen, could you kindly introduce yourself?
Hi, many thanks. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you to the U.S. Embassy for providing us with this platform. It is indeed an honor for me to be sharing the platform with the two ladies that I really just admire so much, Samba and Jessie, and to everybody that is watching here with us. My name is Karen Nakawala, and I am the CEO and founder of the Zambia Fashion Week. When I started the Zambia Fashion Week about 10, 11 years ago now, I think I got in at a time when the fashion industry was practically on its knees, you know, and it just needed to wake up. I realized that it was actually a sleeping giant and just needed somebody to awaken it. We had so many, we had and we still have so many brilliant designers out there who were yearning for a market. And because they didn't have a platform of some sorts for them to showcase their talent, they were treating their artistic talent as a hobby. They didn't realize that they could actually turn that into a business. And I think over time, having held the Zambia Fashion Week now for 10 years plus, they've actually realized that, you know what, this is a business that they can actually embark on. And I'm so happy to see the fashion industry where it is at now. When it comes to the designers, of course, I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. There's need for us, especially the government, to come in and build capacity in the creatives and just deliberately invest in the minds of the creatives, because though we are moving, I think we are moving our albeit at a very slow pace, and there's more that can be done. But I think we've taken the right steps in the right direction, and I love where I see Zambia's fashion industry in the future.
Wow, that's wonderful. Jessie, over to you.
Hello, ladies. Thanks to share with this platform with all of you. Thanks, Pamela, and thanks for the US Embassy for giving us this platform to share with one another. My name's Jessie Chisi. I'm a film director. I'm a creative. I've worked in both narratives and documentary filmmaking. My experience with film has been both rewarding and challenging. Rewarding in a sense that as a woman I've been given a voice. I've been able to find my own voice to contribute to the many aspects of societal issues and problems through my storytelling. And I've been able to uplift others through what I do through my films, by creating employment. And also it's been challenging because navigating through the thresholds of systems of making film is not so much easy. As a woman, you need to be determined more than passion for you to make it. And I'm just grateful that it's not so many women you see having strategic positions of either directing or producing in the film industry today, but I've been given that honor, and I'm so glad to be here and to be able to discuss women in arts.
Wow, marvelous. That's really marvelous. I'm really inspired by your stories, ladies. So now, to begin with, let us maybe try to help the audience understand what we mean by the arts, so that they're able to contextualize their discussion, the discussion that we're having this afternoon. So maybe if any of you could kindly take this on. We just want them to understand the context under which we are discussing the arts.
We'll let Samba pick that.
No, I was gonna say like, wow, that's a big question, like a deep question. What is that?
I know, right?
I think
Samba,
it's, simply put, I mean, it's just a creative expression of an individual or collective. It can be anything, because art can be as vast as architecture. It can even be science, but it's how you interpret the world in an artistic way, whether it's visually, whether it's using your words, whether it's using images, whether it's using film. So there's different kinds of art. So whether it's design, and I think you can. It's a topic on its own. You can talk about it all day. What is the arts? You know, people can think of designing a car as an art form, but it's all expression of creative.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. So, in that sense, so why do you think it's important for women's voices, and especially Indigenous voices as well, to be heard in the art community?
I think historically, whether you think of it, whether it's globally or even in Africa, art forms were always a way of communicating, the way of teaching, the way of passing on messages, the way of protecting communities as well. If you think of praise poetry, if you think of song, if you think of rock art, whatever form you think it is. And with regards to the Women's History Museum, women have always been an integral part of that. In fact, they've been right at the center. But as a result of the tensions of our political history and our colonial history, a lot of those histories have been obscured and have passed out of our living memory or our collective emotional memory. And some of those still are applicable and are quite impactful in our societies. And restoring them means that you're giving back that honor and the strength and the positioning that women had in developing our communities, in protecting our communities, and building our communities and nation. So with regards to the Women's History Museum, that is the importance that we see in bringing back and restoring these narratives so that they can still be applicable and still give back that importance and positioning to women.
Okay, thank you. Karen, what do you think?
Well, she said it all. I think for the longest time, and not just in the artistic sense, women have had taken a backseat, not deliberately, but because we were seen as the sex that whose place was just in the kitchen. But come to think of it, because in the kitchen, for you to be in the kitchen, you actually have to be an artist. You know, cooking is an art. You know, so but women do have a way. They do have an ability of bringing out artistic abilities. You know, and also looking at things in a very innovative way. I think that's because for the longest time we didn't have the voice, you know, to be able to speak up, to be able to express yourself. Like Samba said, art is an expression. We were not able to express ourselves the way that we would have loved to. And so now that we have this space, I think you see a lot of women coming up and doing things that are so incredible. It's like we go above and beyond, you know, because we have this need to sort of show that, you know what, we also deserve our space in the artistic sphere. So you go beyond and above in expressing yourself, and you bring out whatever it is that we do when it comes to fashion, for instance. I think I've seen an extra effort, whether it's because we want to be validated. I don't know if that's the right word, or whether we want to be accepted, but I think we want to show that, you know what, this is our space and we own it. And I think the artistic world is being owned by women. I'll bet there's so many challenges that are there. But as women, I think we just have this ability of going above and beyond and bringing out the abilities and using different, how can I say, expressives to actually show what it is that we want to show. you know, and I think it's time that we got that space. We don't have to beg for it, really. I think we just deserve to be there like anybody else.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So, seeing that it is important for us to preserve our culture through art, our culture and traditions through art, and all, how easy is it for the television industry to actually do that? Jessie, could you kindly share with us how easy and the struggle that you've gone through in preservation of culture and tradition in television?
All right. Okay, before I answer that, I just wanted to comment a little bit about what the two ladies are now connected. So I feel like art is a way of life. And there's a belief that the one who controls your narrative controls you. Okay, for in time immemorial, we had our stories being told from a male point of view. Okay, if we read roles, we see how women are portrayed, either as sexual objects, they're not as powerful, they're vulnerable. And this is why it is very important that for women to own these spaces, to be able to tell their own stories, because they're the custodians of their communities. Okay, they raise presidents, they raise doctors, and they manage homes. They are collaborators in the communities, and all this is in form of color, of material, of words which they could express. And if we don't give them that platform, we surpass connecting us from the past to the present now. So as you said, it's very important to allow women to express themselves, to find their voices, and to be free. Yeah. So, and how do we preserve that? Connecting it to your question, we can preserve it through storytelling, through going back into historical stories, like Samba has said. There's so much we can dig out from to be able to bring out the women that contributed to this country in time memorial, from pre-colonial to post-colonial to present. And that's how we preserve our culture, we preserve our history. We have events happening now, you know, in the current of voting, for example. What is the role of women in the present in terms of politics? And juxtaposition it with the past. What is their role? So yeah, film is such a powerful tool that can reach, you know, so many people at a go, and can also preserve that part of history. Because when you make one documentation of history, you know, people can still look it up in the near future.
And I just wanted to say, can I just add?
Yes, go ahead.
So what Jessie is saying, sorry, yeah. I just wanted to say, in terms of what Jessie was saying, and also what Karen said earlier, it's interesting that we as Africans, and I mean, and particularly as Zambians, we actually have a unique history, you know, in terms of what the women's movement is. Whereas before, the patriarchy was introduced by colonialism. And the way we existed before, we actually had equality, and there were what was called gender relations and gender roles. So the idea of patriarchy that we now understand was actually introduced by colonialism. And we've inherited that as our history, and yet it's not our history. And our unique position is that we've always respected and had women leaders who are transformative in our past and still are the same ones in our current living history. So it's a really unique position that we're in that we're not saying that give us space, you haven't allowed us space. We're just saying, let's restore the equilibrium that existed before, which I think for Africa is quite unique and is a strong positioning for women that we just need to remember and that we've forgotten. I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's really interesting. So then, what do you think the current landscapes looks like for women artists in Zambia? How has it changed, like in the past 10 or 20 years? Karen?
I think there's been a tremendous change, a humongous change, if you ask me. Because if you look back 20 years, just 20 years ago, there were very few women that were in the artistic sphere. And that is because, I'll tell you what, when I was in school, when I was in, I think it was secondary school, when I was asked what I wanted to do, and every time my answer to that question was, I wanted to be a singer, I wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to be a designer, which I picked up from my mom. And she would tell me to say, no, but you know what, women, you cannot earn a living out of singing or acting, because the women that are in these spaces are sort of looked at as what's the right word? Not intelligent. I don't know what word I can use, but they will sort of looked down on by society. Like if you pick up an artistic career, you're just going to end up, as a husband. Nothing is going to happen, for you. And so with that, I told myself, okay, fine, and this is not for me. I had to find something else. And I realized that in trying to find something else, I never excelled in anything else apart from being an artist, So, and that was, if you look 20 years ago, if we go back into music, in the 70s, I think we only had one female artist that you could remember, and that's the late Violet Kafula, may her soul rest in peace. Came the 80s, we had Maureen Landa came up, and a few other female artists came up. They were not taken seriously. You know what I mean? They were, somebody would say, oh no, they're naughty, they didn't do well in school. They can't do anything else apart from singing and, because they can't hold down a white collar job. I was in a white collar job for the early part of my life. But you know what? I had to leave it because I didn't find any satisfaction there. And this is after seeing that a lot of women around me now, because I think because of the exposure, I came across a lot of women that were sort of owning their spaces in the artistic industry. And I decided that was the route I was going to go. I'm one of those artists who's never really known which path to follow, but I had to get into that space. And for me, it meant pushing other people forward, especially women. And when I look back at the 10 years that I have been doing the Zambia Fashion Week, I can proudly say that 85%, if not 90%, of the designers that I have worked and whose careers that I have helped propel are women. And so if this has happened in the last 10 years, the next 10, 15, 20 years, I think the future of the artistic industry is women. When I look at what Samba and Miss Mlenga Kapwepwe are doing, they are bringing out women that we never thought, when you look back, when you look at, say, the likes of Lenshina, if you don't really know what the history is, you'd actually think, oh no, she was just a woman, I think, that was disgruntled and she was looking for attention, but no, she wasn't. And they're bringing up these women, they're teaching us that these women have actually been there. But like she said, the stories were not being told. And if they were told, they were always told in a negative light. But now when we look back in history, we actually realize we had those women, they just didn't have the voice that Jessie is talking about, but now the voice is there. And so when I look at the future landscape of, especially the Zambian industry, I'm so happy. When I look at the fashion industry, I see women leading the industry. When I look at the music industry, I see women leading. When I look at the film industry, I see Jessie, I see Becky, I see women leading it. So I think the future is open. I think the doors have been open. We just have to up and own the spaces. So the future does look very bright for the art industry, for the women in particular.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's marvelous. Anything to add? Samba, Jessie?
I just wanted to add, in addition to what Karen is saying, setting the agenda with regards to sustainability. Karen said earlier that, part of the reason why our parents would be, don't be a this. I'm a trained journalist, and let me tell you, my parents wanted me to be an accountant. So they didn't support my decision to go and study journalism, but I was very insistent. I ignored their persistent doubt. I mean, I think it's only literally maybe 10 years ago that they were like, oh, so you have a real job, kind of thing. But it's these tropes that have been built around the idea of what a career is and what should be successful. But if we study globally how trends have moved, especially around the creatives and sustainability, especially with regards to Africa. Africa is trending now, or has been trending for the last 10 to 15 years. The global sector is using a lot of our artistic form, is using a lot of our indigenous knowledge to actually create products that they're selling globally. A lot of the products that we buy that look African actually come from China. So the question I'm interested in asking around artistic value and sustainability and women's participation in it, because a lot of this stuff is done by women. If you look at, you know, whether it's the cloth, whether it's the hair, whatever it is, if you think of it in an artistic way, how do we set the agenda so that we are appropriating that knowledge and implementing it so it becomes a sustainable sector for us in Africa and even Zambia? You know, how are we using our artistic knowledge and our artistic forms so that we can trace, own them, and decide how commercially they're used so that that commercial benefit can come back to us. And then we start talking about real benefit, real impact, and how to raise the level for the artistic industry.
Okay. That's
Exactly.
wonderful.
Yeah, like
Yes,
what
Jessie?
Samba said, it's really powerful because if you like art in its form, it's looked at as a social entity without having really without having really an economic value to it, you know. That's why, like you said, like both your parents didn't want you to do those things because they didn't see the economic value to it. Like, would you make money out of it? And this is how it has been branded. I agree with Samba that there has to be strategic policies, you know, which should be set in place to turn art as an economical value, as rather than as a cultural value, or you know, as a cultural expression. Women should be also to make not what you call petty economies, you know, where they don't sustain themselves, you know, they don't create a sustainable development, where they will look at their intellectual property of creating that thing, and their children would actually benefit from that because they created it and they can sell for years. So those are kind of like, I think, like Sampa said, that's the kind of direction we need to look at. And it has to be strategic, because in many ways, when these policies are created, they never look at equity, you know, or equality. Okay, how many women should be given this kind of sustainable funding or things like that? It's always limiting because of the institutional policies around them.
Yes, and I think from hearing from you, it's like parents are becoming more and more open-minded and enabling their children to actually participate more in the arts than in any other field. Like you say, a long time ago, you know, parents used to force their children into fields and specializations that they wanted. It's either their field or no school at all. And I'm glad you were able to prevail through all that, and you're able to actually follow your passion, Samba, and like you had said, yeah. So Samba and Karen, it's actually good and wonderful to hear that you actually followed your passion and you're inspiring many out there that have struggled to actually pull through into doing their career as arts, in the field of arts, in the field of fashion. Look at the Lusaka July Fashion Week, Lusaka July Fashion Festival. I mean, so many youth are participating in that event. So now that we have kind of like evolved and we are moving, and we've seen that a lot of artists have actually been struggling either to jumpstart their careers and also with their identity and gaining recognition. So what challenges have really persisted for artists, for women artists in building their career and finding finances in this male-dominated space?
I'll tell you what, when you look at art, I think it doesn't give you, as a woman, it doesn't give you an automatic artistic identity, because you're a woman. But I think when this passion is one thing that drives art. I think it's not something that you actually need to go to school for. I'm not saying don't go to school, but you find that most artists are just naturally born artists. It's not like being an accountant. If you gave me a book today, give me 1+1, trust me, I'm gonna have to struggle. But if you give Jessie a camera right now and put it in front of her, she's gonna do things amazing with it. If you give me a cloth, I'm gonna do something with it, okay? And so it's now the fact that we are owning this space, and suddenly I think people, the male folk, okay, it's actually just men and women, so the male folk will start to feel intimidated. So you'll find that for a woman to actually get access to funding or to get a movie role, I think Jessie will agree with me. We've had so many reports about being sexually abused for you to get a good role, for you to just get up the ladder, unfortunately. But for instance, in the space that I am in, I think it's all about, I think, just being deliberate in the policies that are going to favor the women. We're not saying give us everything that is there, but we're saying, you know what, just give us the space. Because the men already have, just by being male, you sort of have this ownership already, and things come easily to them, okay? We're not saying we're better than them. Like, I think it was Samba who spoke about equity. We just want to be amongst, we want a place at the table. So make it deliberate that we are able to have and access that space and be able to sit without having to look, to your side to see if at all, you're going to be pushed out or you're going to be pushed forward, or going to, I don't know, trampled on. I think we just need to realize that, yes, in as much as we're the weaker sex, I think we can do just as well as anybody. And so I think governments and institutions just need to have this deliberate policy and give funding equitably. I shouldn't have to go an extra mile to be able to get money for a project, when maybe my proposal is even much better than my male counterpart. But because I'm a woman, I have to maybe either sleep with the boss or something in those lines. It has to be a sexual transaction. I think we need to get away from that and just look at what I am able to put on the table. Look at what I am able to achieve. Don't look at me as Karen. Don't look at my gender. Just look at me as a person. The way I see the other person is the way you should be looking at me. So I think it's time that we moved away from, she's a woman, she's got to fight twice as hard for her position. I think it just has to be equitably accessible to everyone in that space.
Okay. Samba?
I agree with what Karen is saying. And I think, interestingly enough, I think we adopt these ideas without actually examining whether it's true, Someone can assume because I'm a woman, therefore I'm not inclined to mathematics or don't like driving fast cars. I mean, why does life have to be so black and white? I mean, it's such a wide space for exploration, and to continuously draw lines around, what can and can't be done, especially in the age that we live in. I think what needs to be done more of, like Karen is saying, just especially now that the spaces have opened up more. This is not just physical spaces. Like, I don't have to just meet you in a boardroom. I can meet you in a digital space. I can meet you even in a remote space, and still we can equally be competitive and find a way to both put our thoughts on the table or both put our intelligence on the table. And it's really just about consistently interrogating that space and consistently asking that question, whether it's you as a person and what you do, and owning that space and not apologizing for doing it.
Yeah. So for me, what is important is that women, like women in the, I'll speak from the film perspective, you know, like some of the challenges that women face is literally like financing, because obviously it has to come, the finance you has to come with experience. And from time immemorial, you've never been in that space to own a company. Now you're owning a company and they need you to have experience, but you don't have as much experience as your counterpart. So meaning the funding always will be going to the men. So like equity plays role in this sense. Also, it is the issue of literally like classifying like jobs, you know, in like somebody's in black and white, like a woman, you should be doing paperwork. No, a woman also can be the camera person. We don't have much of DOPs, camera women in Zambia. We don't have much of, you know, women directors, like people that make strategic decisions, producers. If that way, you won't have sexual exploitation, like Karen has said, because there's actually a woman who understands how much you need that job and you get it on credit. You know, I won't ask to sleep with you if you're talented. I'll just give you the role. But if it's a male, you know, candidate who take advantage, and those who take advantage of that, and those are some of the challenges that women would face to slide into this career. But you know, we need strategic policies, for example, in how you give projects. Let's look at Zambian television. How many shows are really run by women? You know, how many media companies are really run by women? It's very few. So meaning, as we go on, if women don't step up and really create companies to make their own stories, they'll always be hired by someone who have more higher power than them. So those are some of the challenges that we need to thrive above them. And I'm so honored that I'm in a strategic place because I found my voice to tell stories. And this kind inspires other women to sort of like, look, you can also be a director. I've seen a lot of young women coming up and wanting to be film directors. I've seen parents texting me, inboxing me like, hey, look, I want to take my child to film school. I mean, 20 years ago, you need get a parent inboxing you and say, I want to take my child to film school. So meaning the world is actually opening up, like Samba said, like the world is opening up to this idea of, you know, playing a level ground, even though it's very small. So as women also, we just have to be strategic. We can't just be complaining like, hey, men are taking that role. But if you're not going to be a DOP, they won't find a DOP woman. If you're not going to, like, you know, apply yourself to be a producer, they won't find. So women also should just stand up and apply themselves such that when the opportunity comes, we won't be uneven, you know, an even number. Will be like, hey, there's like 50 women against 50 men, so let's give us a job.
Okay, so I'm getting the sense that there's a lot of inequities and there's a lot of like sexual harassment going on in this field, in this profession. So how can we support opportunities for women in the arts then? What opportunities do you see for collaboration among women artists?
Like if I can speak to the present, actually before I answer that question, just to add on to what Jessie was saying, I think it's very important that now that we have these open spaces, we have to realize that we have to fight, and we have to fight twice as hard than our counterparts in order to get our space at the table. The world doesn't own us. It's time we took off the victim veil mentality and just get down and dirty. And unfortunately, because of the narrative that has already been set, which was seriously trying to break, you actually find there are women that will succumb and will do whatever it takes to actually get to the top. When they do get to the top, they don't stay there, they don't last there. Why? Because they did not fight to get there. They decided to get, to get their easy way out. And that is what we have to discourage. And so to answer your question, Pamela, currently, I'm very happy that the US Embassy has actually given, I think it's eight of our designers to study with a leading designer in the US. So they are providing, it's a short course. I think it will go on for about 8 weeks. And they deliberately asked for women only. So when I was asked to pick the 8 designers, I had to start thinking, okay, so probably they're going to, they have this gender thing in mind, and like it has to be gender equality. So I have to think of men as well as women. So I gave them names of both men and women designers. But they came back to me and said, no, Karen, this is just for the young ladies, especially the ones that are up and coming. And so quickly all rushed back, and we have a whole database of them. It wasn't difficult, although it's a lot of them. So we had to start looking at those that we know really need the exposure, they need the capacity. So it's such deliberate policies, I think, that is going to help women get to where they are. But obviously, once we get to that equal footing that Samba was talking about, it's up to each and every person to fight to get a place at the table. Because I don't think it's going to last forever that women are going to be given things on the silver. It's not even on the silver platter. I think it's just because we haven't had these opportunities, and so we have to sort of build the women up to get to where the women to get to where the men are, to be able to fight and jostle in this in the artistic space. So it's just about having deliberate policies. And I would love, I think, other corporates, even our government, to just have something in place deliberately to support the girl child, especially to support the women out there, be it in the rural setup, be in the towns, just deliberately support the women and help them come up. And after that, they'll be able to fight on their own.
Samba, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Karen covered it really well. I mean, it's part of what we've been saying, Jessie as well as Karen. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's wonderful. So now, seeing that COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought about a lot of disruptions in our work operations and in just our normal lives, our daily lives. So what trends do you see for the future in light of this? And how has COVID-19 influenced your workstations, workspaces, social media for women artists? And do you think these changes will continue for the future?
In a way, I think every experience.
Can I repeat that?
No, I heard the question.
Hello?
Did you want to repeat it?
It was clear, I think.
I think it was clear. Can you hear us?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
I was saying, in regards to COVID-19, I think the experience has been different. It's either one extreme or the other. Hello, can you hear me?
I think she's the only one who can hear you.
Okay. Probably she needs to.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So we can hear you. We can hear you clearly.
I think you're just breaking a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying, but it was different extremes for different sectors. Okay. And in particular,
yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I think there's a delay. I think with the arts specifically, you found that especially those who probably did performances, those who relied on things like events and activities, might have had a high impact because then they couldn't do those things that they normally do. But interestingly enough, it also provided an opportunity to pivot and broaden the way we express our arts and also widen our audiences, because whereas maybe sometimes we relied on a certain type of target group or audience or a certain kind of product, we realize that, oh, we can actually do other things as well and explore different ways of generating revenue or different ways of expressing our artistic form. And I think this has been one of the most interesting things during the time of COVID. And for the audiences as well, they realize like, oh, since I only like going to, say, live performances, now I want to experience things in a new way. So in that way, you're also gaining new audiences to cater to that you can provide products to. And so it's really about understanding how and where you can position yourself. I mean, if I can give an example of the film industry, streaming even 2 years ago, 3 years ago was still kind of like a strange thing, but now it is the main thing. So if you suddenly had set up a streaming company 3 years ago and you thought you were not going anywhere because nobody watched stuff on the internet, now suddenly everybody's watching stuff on the internet. So it's really about understanding how to position yourself and how to pivot when in a time of crisis and pandemic, and be adept in recognizing what the opportunities can be and flow with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with what Samba has said, it has been a blessing and a curse at the same time. Like obviously in terms of film.
Thank you for that, Samba.
Hello? She has delayed time. Okay,
Yes.
I'll just continue. So like just to add on what Samba has said, like these times of COVID has been both a blessing and a curse for filmmakers, in a sense that, of course, we've gained more audiences, there's more online streamings, but in terms of the physicalities of producing, you know, because you need to be physically to be able to produce more content, it has slowed most of the works, you know, because you always have to be conscious of the number of crew you're gonna hire, you know, because of COVID, and that is quite a bit challenging. It means having small crew, meaning some people have to lose out on jobs because they can't just be a huge crew on set. And that is like the downside of COVID. But aside that, it has introduced all these virtual, you know, meetings of festivals now going online. You're able to access free content, for example, for learning content. There's been a lot during this COVID of learning material, like overwhelmingly, like people have been just to offer film school lessons for free, and you know, you can as well just take it upon yourself to just like improve your skills. Well, looking at the future, no one wants this thing to last forever because we are social beings. We want that interaction, that feedback, to be able to just like discuss ideas in open spaces, in closed rooms, without being like these far and apart. We just hope, like, we just anticipating and hoping, like, you know, with these vaccines or whatever solutions comes in place, things can just open up and life resumes. It's a phase. I'm sure it will pass. I believe so that this cannot be forever.
And just to add on to what both Samba and Jessie have said, I mean, if you look at the Zambia Fashion Week, that's one event that will have, at least when we don't have a lot of people during a show, we'll probably have 300, 400 people. And so last year, we couldn't have it because I think we're all thinking, so what are we going to do? You know, but then we realized life has to go on. And I think COVID has taught us to sort of be very innovative, like Samba said, be innovative in how to reach your audiences, because you cannot lose them. But at the same time, we need to realize that even if things were to get back to normal, I think the digital space is not going anywhere. I don't even think we're going to go back to normal, not the way that we knew it before, because I think we'll still be very cautious, when it comes to, like Jessie says, how many numbers, how many people are here. So we just have to share the space with the digital space now and just get innovative on how we can showcase whatever it is that we have. And obviously, it has also given an opportunity for a lot of people that, for instance, were not able to attend, to go and watch a movie, okay? But now you can watch movies on the internet for free. Now they're able to watch festivals, film festivals, music festivals. They're able to watch those on the internet for free. So going forward, we just have to learn to have to share the space with the digital space, in as much as we want to be physical. I know Zambia Fashion Week, for instance, on the last day, we have not less than 800, 1,000 people, but we know that at the same time, we have to cater for those ones that are still on the digital space. So COVID has taught us, it's a blessing and a curse, yeah.
Can you ladies kindly share something significant that you've experienced in your life, as in your profession, before we invite questions from our audience? Could you kindly share briefly about one significant thing that you've achieved?
Well, like in my, it's so hard to talk about what you've achieved. Anyway, like in my capacity, like as a filmmaker, I was able to direct like my first feature documentary, which showed in over 50 film festivals around the world. It premiered on Al Jazeera, and I was able to make one of the first Zambia hit shows, Zuba, the telenovela, the first season 1 and 2.
As I always find it hard to answer that question. What does it mean? It's relative, what success is and what achievement is. If you ask me what I would consider an achievement, is something that somebody else wouldn't probably consider it. After I did my master's in London, I worked at the BBC, and somebody would think that's the epitome of what work is. I worked on the Focus Africa desk, but I left because I knew these are not the stories that I wanted to tell. I wanted to come back to Zambia and be able to shape how stories are told, because I noticed when other people are telling the stories, they're not telling them the way that we should be telling them, and they're leaving out a lot of the content. And so fast forward, when we now started working on Women's History Museum and we created the series, and we started seeing the impact that it had. And one of the comments, which was repeated over and over again by many, many of the audience that watched it, was when they saw one of the stories, they would come back and say, if I had learned about this when I was in school, I would think of myself as a woman in a different way. And a lot of comments would get from men would be, if I had known this about women, I would think of women in a different way. To me, that was the most impactful thing I've ever done in my whole life. Not the accolades, not the whatever. It's being able to change the mindset, the negative mindset of somebody, to see themselves in a positive light and to empower them in the most visceral way, for me, which is the most important way. It means they can do anything. I hope that answers your question.
I think for me, the fact that I jumped into an industry that nobody thought was going to go anywhere. And I remember when I started the first Zambia Fashion Week, I had less than 10 designers. And I don't know what made me think I could actually hold the show for 5 days straight with 2 designers every day. And that was about 11 years ago. And now every time we have a show, we have more than 60 designers, to a point where we actually have to say, you know what, no, this is a bit too much, So I think for me and my team, I think that's a very big achievement. And then also, I think the one thing that I'm very proud of personally is being a founding board member of the Commonwealth Fashion Council, because sometimes you'll be doing something and you think, oh, it's insignificant, like Samba says, but then other people think you're actually doing something. And so I was asked to sit on the board, and I'm one of 11, and I think 2, if not 3, out of Africa. And then the other thing was I was named one of the 50 most influential people in the fashion industry in Africa, amongst people that I grew up looking up to, and then suddenly I have to share a space with them. I think so for me, that makes me very proud. And when I get parents coming to me, asking me to speak to their daughters or their sons who actually want to get into the space of designing, I think that's an achievement.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So there's some questions here, some questions and comments that have come through. So someone is asking, COVID-19 has increased the vulnerability of women and girls. So what policies have been set by the US Embassy and influential women in Zambia? COVID-19 has increased the vulnerability of women and girls. What policies have been set by the US Embassy and influential women in Zambia?
Pamela, I think this is one of the deliberate moves that they have done as an embassy, bringing to the fore women, to actually come and speak in this space. They could have easily picked the men, who are seemingly dominating in the industry that we're in, but they decided to celebrate women and bring on women. So for me, this is a job well done, really, and would like it to happen more often. Would like to get selfish like that and get it to happen more often. So yeah, I think this is one of them, and we're grateful. We're grateful.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, Matthews, this is one of those things. This is a platform that the U.S. Embassy has created to get women's voices out there and to get people to listen and hear more from women and inspire others out there. And also the collaborations that they're putting through, like Karen had said, in relation to the fashion industry. So basically, there is more and more deliberate policies that the U.S. Embassy is actually bringing out. There's also another question that's coming through. What question did I see there? Okay. Is there any more questions from the audience? You can type them through the chat boxes. You can type them through the chat box.
Pamela, there's one here that has been directed at
So there's a question again from Matthews. Yes, the question from Matthews, yes, which is saying women in the rural areas are less aware of their rights. And now that due to the increased poverty at all levels and lack of financial literacy, give in to harmful activities to survive. So what would be your strategy to reach out to them? It wasn't directed to any particular person, so any panelists can take it on. It says women in rural areas are less aware of their rights, and now due to increased poverty levels and lack of financial literacy, they give in to harmful activities in order for them to survive. So what strategies would you put out in order to reach them?
I think, I don't think it's one answer to that. It's definitely a bigger answer and a much more broader, because there are various issues that to consider in a situation like that, you know, whether it's at community level, whether it's at national level, whether it's at